Hello. Today is the 13th of September 2025, and I have something different for this video. I'm going to talk about sport and particularly tennis. Not that I am an expert on sport or tennis, but I'll tell you how this started. The main thing, the main interview is the main context is that I was listening to an interview with Tony Nadal, who is Rafael Nadal's uncle, and who was his coach, his trainer for the longest time, since the age of 3. And I'm going to tell you how this came about, but this is a coach of a different type of coach. Can you imagine a coach that actually quotes St. Augustine and Goethe and Viktor Frankl and Aristotle? I was fascinated by this philosopher coach, and he has very interesting things to do about life in general. He's talking about training, but training in a particular sport, but the way he sees life and how you train a person to have character and so on. So I tell you how it came about. I was talking to my brother on the telephone, and I said, I think it was last Sunday, and I said to him, so what are you doing? And he said, oh, I'm watching the tennis final. I thought of Wimbledon, and I thought, but that's at the end of June, beginning July. No, he said the US Open. And I said, oh, okay. I'm not following it at all myself, but I just asked, I said, who is playing then? And he said two names that I didn't understand at first. And I said, who? He said Alcaraz and Sinner. Well, I hadn't heard of them at all. My thing about tennis goes back to the days of Connors and McEnroe and um, Rafa Nadal, yes, and Federer, of course, and Djokovic. In the women's final, I remember Martina Navratilova and the other lady. Yeah, but I haven't been following it at all. So anyway, I said, oh, then go back to it. And then I thought, okay, so what is this tennis? And I looked it up on YouTube, and I saw that guy, a young man, 22 years of age, Alcaraz, and playing. And I thought, okay, US final. I wanted to see what he was like, what kind of a player was like. And I watched a whole match between him and Jakovic, and he lost. But then okay. But then I saw something else that he had won, and I said, but how did he win? I just saw him lose. Well, I had been watching a game from 2023, and apparently this last one he won. So I watched that last one. To tell you the truth, and you can see I know very little about tennis. Um, all the videos were and the talks were, oh my goodness, this great player, Alcaraz, and all that. And from that last video, I saw that he was a good player, but I didn't think he was the absolute. I mean, I saw that he was missing a lot of first serves, but I didn't think he was the greatest by any means. But I thought, well, this is only one match, so perhaps people are seeing things in him, the potential, and he's so young, and of course he'll learn, and so anyway, so that was that. But you know how YouTube, once you're watching one thing, then you get fed all these other things, right? And then I saw a meeting, well, a celebration to give Rafael Nadal a special prize, thanks, and all that in France, in Roland Garros there. He had won so many finals in that is the clay surface, right? I think he won eight, something like that. So special thing about him. And I saw him there. He has retired, I believe. And I saw him there very, very moved, teary eyed, and just about to cry. And then the two great players, there were three players came, Federer and Djokovic, and then another one that I didn't know who he was. And they're there and they're hugging and really, good friends. And anyway, he was, by that time, Nadal was crying and all that. Okay, so I watched that and I said, oh, how nice. And then I was fed this interview with his uncle, Tony Nadal. And I started watching it just to see, and I was fascinated by this man. It was an interview for a young audience. The video doesn't tell us where it was, but the interviewers were two very young guys, perhaps 19, 20-year old. And he was big auditorium full of young people. I suppose it was at a university or something, or perhaps young athletes of, I don't know. I don't know where it was, but anyway, it was huge. Lots and lots of young people there. So he is addressing young people all the time. You have to take that into account. So I've been sort of with the help of YouTube, I've been translating the interviews very long. I can only go sort of halfway, but it's really interesting. See what you think. So it starts with them saying, so Mr. Nadal, to introduce you, we have just met, so we don't know where this conversation is going to go, but I'm delighted you're here, blah, blah, blah. Uh, so, sir, uh, you have been looking after Rafa Nadal's career for 27 years. By the way, I noticed that the young guys were always saying Rafa, Rafa, and he always called him Rafael for some reason, or my nephew, either my nephew or Rafael. Okay, so yes, he says I was there for a long time, but uh, they tell him, oh, you're going to inspire us to. He said, I don't know. I hope I can inspire someone. I don't know. Uh, okay, so you were with him for 27 years, since he was 3 years old. Yes, I was a long time with him because I don't know, perhaps it was because I was the cheapest coach in the professional circuit, and there is laughter all around. Uh, then question. But now, then you gave that up, and then you became the director of the Nadal Academy for tennis in Mallorca, and you did that for quite a while. And now you are in the speaking circuit, uh, public speaking, talking to young people, universities, and so on. Now, uh, this is the next stage in your life. So, my first question asks the young interviewer, how do you, before we start talking about Rafa Nadal and all that, how do you yourself now prepare yourself? How do you prepare yourself when you go and talk, give a conference in public? What is the first thing that you say? How do you start the talk? Well, normally, he said, I first introduce myself. I say who I am and why I'm here. And after all, I do not pretend. I have never pretended to be a great coach or anything. I am not. I sort of limit myself, nevertheless, to talk about my way, my experience, my if I want to put it in this way, my way of understanding the world and my way of understanding the challenges that we have to set for ourselves. And the challenges that we, my nephew and I, set for ourselves. And the way I understood to be the best way to reach those goals. And that is what I explain, and that is what I talk about. That's all. I talk about my vision of sport. At the end of the day, I never did anything on a tennis court that I wouldn't have applied outside of a tennis court. That is to say, in life, whether you move in this arena or in another arena is exactly the same, at least for me, everywhere, except perhaps in politics. They do seem to have their own principles, if we can call them that, or perhaps uh, other standards, let's put it that way. But in sport, as in everything else in life, the more you prepare, the more options or the more chances you have to succeed. That is what I always try to apply with Rafael. Sir, you seem very calm. You never seem to get nervous. You never appear to be nervous. How do you manage to always remain so calm? Not to be nervous, never to appear nervous at any rate. Oh, I do get, I did get nervous in Grand Slams, for example. Yes, I was nervous, of course. There is so much more at stake there. But apart from that, I'm not nervous when now I am about to speak. Because before I start, I apply the same principles. I'm going to talk about things that I have thought about, that I have prepared, things that I know about, that I have thought through quite a bit. It's never the case that I'm going to speak on a subject that I am going to sort of invent at that moment or come up with or nothing like that. I talk about what I know. I would, of course, be nervous if I came here to talk to you young people about quantum physics, but I am not. Yes, yes, says the interviewer, but I mean, you know, Rafa Nadal also knows a lot about tennis, but before a final at Wimbledon, for example, he was nervous. What I'm saying is, any advice to turn those nerves into something else, into hope, for example. He says, everyone gets nervous at one time or another. All of you young people get nervous, say, for example, before an exam, right? Before you take an exam, you get nervous. What that means is that when you care about what you are doing and you want to do it well, of course you get nervous. In the world of sport, it's even more so because no matter how well prepared you might be, you don't know how well prepared also your opponent is going to be. You can be very well prepared, but if your opponent has a great match that particular day, or he's simply playing well, or he's better than you, then very likely, regardless of how well prepared you are going to lose, right? So, of course, you get nervous. But those who have the ability to handle their nerves and transform them and change them into something positive in the world of sport, those are normally the people who usually succeed in the end. Remember throughout that he's talking to a very young audience. They are all teenagers, it seems like to me. Okay, sir. So let's start a little bit with your history before we move on to Rafa Nadal. You came to Barcelona as a young man to study law, right? No, no, no. I came to Barcelona to play tennis and at the same time to study. My father, you see, would not let me just come to play tennis, or to play any sport. So I had to study. I had to study something. At first I studied history, then I switched to law. But I was not a very good student. I didn't finish my degree, one or the other, and finally I devoted myself to what I really always loved all my life, and that was sport and then training. Why didn't you finish your studies? Well, I was not motivated. I liked history quite a bit, but law, no, not really. If you have the opportunity, the chance to choose what you can do, not all of us have it, but if you have the chance, it will always be better for you you will have a better time, you will enjoy your life much more if you are motivated. At the end, I devoted myself to something I was truly passionate about, and that was sport. Why tennis? Because, well, you see, I liked at the beginning all sports, football, swimming, even ping pong and tennis. Then I saw a competition in Barcelona, a player who, to me, oh my goodness, spoke volumes the, about the world of sport and tennis in particular. His name was Elina Stasi. I remember Elina Stasi. My goodness, this goes back to the late 60s or early 70s, I believe. You remember Nastasi? He was from Hungary, I believe. Was it Hungary or was it Romania? I'm not sure. Uh, Anyway, but before McEnroe, he was the first one to actually, with all these antics in the court and complain and this and that. Before McEnroe, he was the first one, but he was a very, very good player. He was very, very famous at the time in the 70s, I'm telling you. Elena Stasi, some of you might remember him. Anyway, so he said, I just started playing tennis. I liked it a lot. But I am now, I became a trainer, a coach, if you like, um, and in sport. Okay. To me, I like sport, all sports, sport with a capital S, he says. Then he goes on to say, we live today in a world when we speak of athletes as if they were demigods. Not me. For me, the value of sport, as I said, in general, with a capital S, sport, is the value of personal improvement, a way to improve the personal challenges, uh, and you get to get better at it, to achieve your best. That's how I see it. It is true, of course, that there is always the question of ability, of skill, of aesthetics. But for me, the initial background is that the foundation is personal improvement. That is what always motivated me. What I mean to say is this: you set yourself a challenge, a goal, and the trying to achieve that goal, that was the main thing for me always. I mean, the main challenge in life that I set for myself and for my nephew was not necessarily to win Roland Garros, in France, or Wimbledon, but rather, above all, to continually improve. I know it sounds not realistic, but consider that winning doesn't depend entirely always on you. I might be completely against, I might be competing against, 3 or 4 Federers or 5 or 6 Djokovic's. So it's not the winning. I may not always win, but it is always that trying to improve oneself. I don't think the 2 young interviewers are very convinced. So they keep at it. So they say, okay, so he was 3 years old. At the age of 3, when you started training, if you can call training, Rafa Nadal. Okay. Now, at the age of 3, can you see really in a little kid, that he's going to be one of the best in the world? And he said, no, not at 3, no. What I saw was this. What I saw was that this kid could actually have a certain skill. The first time I threw the ball at him, I could see that he had some coordination. But you don't know that at 3. You don't know how things are going to develop. You don't know if he's going to be a good player or not. But what I did know at the age of 7, when he was 7, I did notice that he had special ability for it. And I told my brother, his father, Rafa's father, that his son would actually be a champion in Spanish tennis. That I saw very clearly. I only told my brother, you understand, because if I told anybody else, they would probably say, oh, they call me an idiot or something. But I saw some skill there. I was training at the time one young man. I was coaching him, and he was at that time the second best in Spain. And I thought, if this one person, young man, is the second best, I think my nephew has the innate skill, the talent to be better, to grow to be better than this one particular player. And then every year, the reality was that the truth of it was that my nephew was meeting always the expectations that he himself had. So with each passing year, you realize that I realized that he could actually become a great player. Question, and apart from the physical or the technical training, how did you prepare the whole mental part, of Rafa, the mental part? Well, he says, this is a bit of a hoax, really, the mental training, the mental ability. He says, today, everybody's always talking about this hoax and that hoax, but this is, I believe, a hoax, really, this mental issue. You don't prepare for it specifically. You don't train for it specifically as one isolated item as such, an isolated part. You can specifically train the technique, for example, of a serve or the physical side of it, the technical side of it. The mental is not the same thing at all, or at least I don't know of any specific training for it. I don't know what they mean by this. Look, in life, you prepare yourself as you grow to deal with things, to take on things. You prepare yourself by pushing yourself to the limit of your ability every day. This is what prepares you mentally every day. Growth every day. You know, years ago, I saw a film with Sean Connery and Dustin Hoffman, and I think it was Matthew Broderick. It was called Family Business. I think it was from the 80s. And it was a family. They were they were preparing, planning a robbery. The family was the grandfather, the father, and the son, and they were preparing. They were planning a robbery. At the end, one of them gets caught, and it is the grandfather, and he was sent to jail. And when his grandson goes to jail to visit him, and he's very unhappy and he's worried because his grandfather is in prison, Sean Connery, the grandfather, says to his grandson, "Don't be down and downcast like that." He says, "If you're not prepared to take the punishment, then don't commit the crime to begin with." And that is the reality. This is what I always try to transmit to Rafael. If you're not ready to assume, to accept defeat, which is going to happen, then don't play. The mental strength comes from embracing adversity, from accepting that things can go wrong for you. They will go wrong for you. So then, how do you prepare yourself mentally for that? It's not a technique. I don't know why in other countries they call it that. I don't understand it. It's not a technique. It's a philosophy of life. How do you prepare yourself mentally for life? How do you prepare yourself mentally? As you prepare yourself mentally for life, habits, conduct. Remember Aristotle. He says, habits create character. A continued habit, conduct. That's it. If when you go to train, look, when Rafael came to train as a child, I always told him, as a little child, I told him, first of all, a brave face. I want to see smile. Smile. That's the first thing I want to see. Then accept if you make a mistake. Accept it. Accept that things can go wrong. Accepting that things can go wrong is fundamental in life. From there on, I used to tell him, if you're not capable of defeating your opponent, at least don't help him to defeat you. Well, if one day Rafael made, when he was a little kid, a bad face at something that he did, a mistake he made, I'd always say to him, what do you think your opponent wants to see? Do you think he wants to see you angry, or do you think he wants to see you happy? What do you think? When you have a bad face, a bad face, with the bad face, you're helping him, you know. So don't do that because you're going to help him. So mentally, how do you prepare yourself? What's the problem here? Sometimes it's frustration. Where does frustration come from? Which is what nowadays is often repeated among the young. Because they get frustrated or they get unhappy. And I think that this is because there is less capacity among you young people, I think, for endurance. Why? Why less capacity to endure when things go wrong? I think several reasons, in my opinion. First, because we live in a world where the main thing in life seems to be to always have fun, to have a good time. Where does this idea come from? The problem with this attitude is that then you are going to loathe everything that gets in the way of having fun, everything and anything that we're going to get mad at anything that bothers us, right? More than that, we live in this new world. I don't quite understand it, where things have to be achieved quickly. And that is a problem too. And finally, also, we live in a world where we have to always tell people what they like to hear. I mean, ultimately, this causes you eventually and causes in you an over-evaluation of yourself, a personal over-evaluation of yourself. You may think that you are much better than what you really are, and that doesn't help you. And of course, if you believe that you are better than you really are, in the end, what happens? You see, you're a tennis player, you think you're much better than you are, and what happens? At the end of the day, you have to go out there and play. And I can tell you, I could tell you, I could tell anybody, oh, you're really good. You're very good, very good. You're the best. Yes, but then when he comes out to court and play in real life and gets beaten up badly, what happens then? His world comes crumbling down. Yes, but Mr. Nadal, I saw in some magazine, I read that they were quoting you apparently, and that one day you said to Rafa, and I'm quoting from the magazine, the young man says, Federer has a better right hand forehand than you have. He serves better than you serve. The backhand is also better than yours. And Rafa then amazingly apparently was not depressed or downcast or discouraged, right? No. He was not downcast because Rafa always accepted things. Rafael always accepted things. He did. This happened, I know what you're referring to. This happened in a final in Monte Carlo. He asked me directly, Tony, honestly, how do you see today's match? And I said, how do I see it? Well, I see it quite complicated. There was an hour. That was an hour before the game was supposed to start. I had to come out to play. I see it complicated because Federer has a better forehand than you do. The backhand is also better. He volleys better than you do. And then when I was just about to start about the serve, which was never very good, My nephew told me, stop, 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 stop. I mean, what a morale are you giving me to go out right now just before I'm about to go out to play? And I said to him, if you like, I can deceive you. If you like, I can flatter you and fool you, if that's what you want to hear, really. But that Swiss gentleman out there is not going to spend any time fooling you. He's going to show you loud and clear, right, what the reality is, right? So, why would you want me to flatter you and deceive you now? That is the reality. I can actually see how, because if I remember Rafa Nadal playing, he always, what I remember is this thing that he would never give up, right? He always, he always kept going, even when he was down. He never seemed, he never seemed to give in, if I remember correctly. He would always try. So this is his uncle saying. So I would say to him, so he does this thing better and this other thing and this other. So now let's focus on what the solution is to this reality, because you see, I think in life there are always solutions to problems, and this is an issue. This is an easy issue. I start from what seemed to be very uncomplicated, easy principles always. Look, to design a good strategy, one has to accept reality. That is the truth. From here on, when I accept that reality, my reality and my opponent's reality, he says, then I can think of and design a good strategy, right? But if I start from the wrong premise, that I am better than I am, if I want to, let me put it this way, he says, if I want to go to Madrid from here, right, the center of Spain, it is not the same if I am here in Barcelona in the east as if I am in Seville in the south, right? If I am in Barcelona, I have to go in this direction. And if I am in Seville to go to Madrid, I have to go in this other direction, right? All the young people are saying, yeah. Okay, so I have to know, first of all, where I am. I have to know that. This is simple enough. But nowadays, it's very difficult to apply this because between the so-called political correctness or something, that apparently we cannot tell anyone the truth because people will be offended. And between this and I don't know, look, also some psychologists, if there is some psychologists with out there with you, young people in the audience, I don't know. But, well, sometimes I have seen and read things about what psychologists say, or psychological advice, that tell us that we always have to give positive messages, positive feedback, messages that raise the player's self esteem, messages to increase their self confidence. That is a very strange culture to me. Where does this come from? I believe these type of messages, what they actually promote is self-deception. Self-deception will get you nowhere. Nowhere in life, for sure. We all have to be, young people out there, we all have to be young enough, brave enough to accept what the reality is, what the truth is. And at the same time, be determined enough to try to change that reality. How can I change the reality of things if I don't even know what that reality is? And always knowing what, look, it's not just as simple as just do it. What Nike told us, you can if you want. If you want, you can. No. If you want something, you won't necessarily always get it. You won't necessarily always be able to. If Djokovic and now Alcaraz and Sinner want to win, the three of us, the Ronald Garros Prize, well, two of them won't be able to. Only one will get it, right? So, yes, sometimes you want, but you won't. It's something I used to repeat to Rafael over and over. I don't know how many times I told him. Doing things well will not guarantee us success. Doing things badly almost always guarantees failure. So, you have the choice. Choose. Choose doing things well as you can. This is my opinion of life. The next question was, Rafa was 16 when his debut in the professional circuit, right? Well, he was 15 really when he played his first game, but he was 16 when he got in the list of the top 100, yes. Now, as a 16-year-old teenager, how does a 16-year-old teenager handle all of this success? Well, he must have been because he. Oh, I can't read my notes very well. Oh yes, it's a play with it's a play with the Spanish language with the verbs. Well, he must have been good because he was. Never mind. At the end, there are some who are not. But my nephew, all his life knew that his career was really what his career involved was to successfully pass a ball over a net. That is what it is. It is true that there are people who go crazy, who balloon their ego when they have a little bit of success at something, but honestly, in the case of my nephew, I can tell you, he always understood, all his life, he understood that he was an ordinary guy whose job was an activity which entailed passing a ball over a net. That he was good at it. But outside the court, he was still this guy, what he was. The next question is, Alcaraz, which is this new player. I saw a documentary not long ago, a year ago or so. He was at the time 21 years old. And I saw in the documentary, the young interviewer is saying this, there seems to be always this constant duel within himself. He wants to be number one for sure in tennis, but at the same time, it is very difficult for him, that mentally difficult for him, because he also wants to have his personal life with his family. He misses that a lot. He wants to be at home. He wants to have family dinners at home. He wants to lead a normal guy's life at the same time, like the rest of us. But he sees that the professional circuit and all that that entails, he only spends 2 months of the year at home, and that prevents him from living that life that he would like to lead. It's such an effort, just as you said. It is not really just hitting a ball over a net. That particular division really weighs on him. Well, if Nadal says, if it weighs heavily on him, he should quit tennis. And there is a, oh no, from the no, oh, what do you, and he says, what do you want me to say? The audience, oh my gosh. And the interviewer says, don't you think you're a little bit too harsh? How can you say that about Alcaraz to quit tennis? No, he said, no, look, I understand things in life differently. I suppose that is what it is. Look, in the world of sport, there is a tendency to exaggerate everything. How many times have I heard talk about the sacrifice of sport? I was one day at the Bernabeu Stadium, that is in Madrid, the Real Madrid soccer, football, stadium. I was there, and someone told me. He pointed out to the players and said to me, "Oh, the sacrifice the athletes, the players have to make." The players of the Real Madrid, all that sacrifice that they were making. And I said, sacrifice? Sacrifice? Do you understand what sacrifice is? Here comes the Catholic bit of Catholic culture. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about cosmovision of understanding the world. And the student, and he continues. Look, my son is currently, let me give you an example. My son is currently studying in Barcelona. Well, that is because if you want to study the subject that he wants to study for a degree that is not available, that is available in Barcelona, but not at the university where we live in Mallorca, well, then he has to go there, and there is a cost to it. In other words, there is always a price you have to be prepared to assume. Life is always about giving something up in exchange for something that you want. It's not about always doing what you want. You will find many times in life that you have to give up something if you want something else. If you consider that the exchange and the giving up for that something pays off in the end. Sometimes it's not worth it for you to give that something up. Sometimes it is. If it doesn't pay off for you, then you'd better change jobs or goals. I do hope that Alcaraz will not change his goal. I do hope, obviously, that he will continue, because he's one of the best in the world at the moment. But one has to accept the challenge. The challenge is that what one is doing in life is always going to involve a series of choices. You are going to have to waive some others, to forego others. But don't call that a sacrifice. I understand sacrifice to be something that you do for others, for someone else. You give something up yourself for someone else. The sacrifice that Jesus Christ made on the cross, that was not for himself, it was for everybody else. He did it for others. But when you do it for yourself, that is not a sacrifice. That is the price that you have to pay for having decided that this is what you want to do, and you have to give something else up. What I know is that in the end, Alcaraz, being a great tennis player, apart from the fact that yes, he is paying the price, he will have to go to, well, for example, go to Australia, maybe at Christmas time, as Rafael did. Yes, that is a cost. But on the other hand, look at it the other way. He's also earning much more money than the vast majority of young people his own age. Well, that is the choice, yeah? He also has much greater social recognition. He is living, and others like him are living experiences that few people do. So you, at the end, you have to weigh it, put it all in a scale. Is it worth it? Worth it for you or not? And if it doesn't compensate, then it's better for you to change and make another decision. For me, it did compensate. It did pay off for my nephew. The thing is, of course, if he doesn't want to pay the price, but listen, price is something that you're going to have to pay. Everybody has to pay a price in whatever life choices you make. That was his explanation. So then the next question. I was asking that because at the end of that documentary, he said that he would rather choose happiness over success. That's what he said. And Nadal answers, you mean renounce happiness for success? Do you think that Rafael was not happy when he was playing tennis? He didn't have to give up happiness. That wasn't the choice. Of course he was happy. Very, very happy indeed playing tennis. When he had been playing tennis at the beginning, he was at one time playing in a junior European tournament, in a championship. I think he was 12 at the time, and we were in France. And I remember that we were waiting for him to go out into the court to play. And I remember we were playing one of those little machines, how do you call it, play ball or something? I don't remember, something like that. Oh, do you mean pinball? Yeah, pinball, whatever. Okay, so we were playing that. And just waiting for him to go out court. And at one point, he looked up and saw a clock right in front of us there. It was 12 o'clock, and he said he was 12, and he said, oh, look, this is what my nephew said. Oh, this is great. All my friends at the moment are in a maths class and look at me here playing pinball. Great. 12 years old. But the interviewer says, yes, but I always understood that you are happy. One is supposed to be happy, we're told. That is what people say. When we what gives us happiness are the small things in life, that for example, a solitary beach, that sort of thing. He's a very young person, so that kind of happiness perhaps you get at a later age when you see things in a different way. Not necessarily every teenager is going to find happiness in that way. But anyway, he says, but okay, so that is how they tell us that you can be happy. But can you really be happy, he asks, when you are so obsessed with being number one, number one, number one? No, you shouldn't be obsessed with being number one. Oh, but you do, says the young man. But you do have to be obsessed with being number one if you want to be number one, right? Well, I can tell you, honestly, that I made sure my nephew was never obsessed with being number one. Let me explain this to you, young people, because I know many of you may doubt what I am saying here. It may not make a lot of sense to you. His obsession was with playing tennis well. Let me explain. Playing tennis was what ultimately gave him that personal satisfaction. I have often told kids, young kids, at the academy, the Nadal Academy that Rafael founded in Manacor, in Mallorca, I always told them, look here, if you don't find any satisfaction, any pleasure in the actual playing, let's call it the process, you are hardly going to find satisfaction or pleasure or enjoyment in the final outcome. I truly believe this. Let me explain. My nephew enjoyed the process, the playing. He did. I myself enjoyed myself more in the process too, than in the final result. Look, for me, of course, the final result is extremely important. Seeing my nephew win in Roland Garros so many times, also at Wimbledon. But that is once a year. Okay, you're very, very happy. But what really brings you a lot of joy inside is the daily being there, the daily struggle to try to get things a little better every day. Seeing, as I was seeing, witnessing how we would set a goal. Okay, you have to improve your serve here, serve there, and struggle and try and try. And finally he got it. And that when he got and achieved that, that is truly joyful. It really brings you happiness daily, every day, achieving, getting a little bit better every day. It gives you a lot of satisfaction. That, believe me, it is true. I read the other day, not long ago, he says, a book by Viktor Frankl. I suppose is he didn't mention the book, I suppose is In Search of Meaning. He's a philosopher, he was also a psychologist, of course. And he said, Viktor Frankl, that not having any problems, any struggle in life is not mentally healthy. You end up being unhealthy unless you have something to struggle for, something to live for. You will end up with, Frankl says, unhygienic mind. This thing about life being untroubled by anything was not good, he said, for your mental hygiene. You have to have something, a goal, a struggle, a problem, yes. You have to set goals. You have to try to solve those goals, to achieve those aims. If you don't struggle for something, you begin to degenerate. You have to do things that between what you are and what you want to become, you want to achieve that. That's something that is going to cost you always some effort. Always. This, I am telling you, young people, he says, is what my nephew tried to do, really, all his life. The next question is, now changing topics now about him. I'm curious, what about all those routines that is true? All about those things that he did, all those gestures that he used to do before starting playing. The gestures before serving, especially. And Nadal laughs. And he says, yes. These are things, actually, he said, psychologists came up with all sorts of explanations for that and interpretations, a variety of interpretation. So many that even he himself, Nadal, ended up believing them. I heard psychologists say that all these manias that he had, all these things he did, helped him. He did them because they helped him to concentrate better. And when we talked about that, he told me, yes, it's true. And I said to him, now, let's see, look. So, what you're saying to me right now is, if that is true, that before you did them, for a long time you didn't do them, then you went concentrating? Is that what you're saying? That you started concentrating when you started doing all those funny things? Of course you were concentrating then. And he was. He would focus and concentrate exactly the same. But if now you are yourself creating for yourself a need, a necessity, in the end, of course, it becomes a necessity. You created the necessity. So now it is a necessity. It becomes necessary. But you created that need yourself. You didn't need the necessity before. If you right right now create, he's talking to the interviewer who has a table in front and there is a bottle of water there in front, right? And he says, now, if you right now you create for yourself the need to have this bottle not right here in front of you but over there to the side, then eventually you will always have to have it right there on that side, right? You created that need. So now I guess you will always need to do it. I remember years ago, one time, My nephew saw a film. It's the title is As Good as It Gets. You remember from years and years ago with Jack Nicholson, a compulsive person who has these things, okay, manias he calls it. Uh, and Raphael said, "My goodness, what a compulsive maniac guy. He did this and he had to do that, and he wouldn't step over on lines." And I told him, "That's the same as you." And he said, "Me? I don't have any compulsions like that." "Oh no? You haven't watched yourself?" "Look at yourself sometimes, all the things that you do on the court." And he said to me, "Well, I see what you mean. Yes, okay. So if you want me to, I'll stop doing them." And I said, "Yes, stop, please, because it's getting to look ridiculous." And he said, "Well, I tell you what, from the next tournament, I won't do them again." And I said, "Fine." And then I realized, oh my goodness, the next tournament was Wimbledon. So I said to him, "Well, perhaps not this next tournament. Stop doing them in the second tournament, in the next one, just in case." Um, these are things that little by little he kept adding on more and more. I think it was really releasing of tension. I think it was just tension that he was releasing. And but each time there were more and more, each time there was more and more tension, yes. Another question, why was he so good on clay? Oh, because all the conditions were right for his tennis, the way he plays tennis, his speciality or specialism, as it were, in tennis, let's say. We had always trained on clay anyway when he was young. Well, practically always. So he did what I believe suited him best. He adapted very well to that type of surface. He moved always back and forth very well. He put a lot of spin on the ball because he had great speed in the wrist and in the arm, and so he was able to put a lot of spin on the ball, and this suited him very well on clay. Mentally also very well. It's a surface that forces you to concentrate more, be more consistent at any rate. Grass is different. You also have longer points playing. Um, all this suited him very well, the kind of tennis player that he is. Um, how about ambition? More than ambition is needed. If you have great ambition, yes, this leads you to have greater motivation for sure. But I'll say again what I said earlier. Rafael's ambition was not only just to win. This is true. It was always to improve, improve, improve. And he was aware that in sport, you have to surpass yourself continually. It's the first step to surpassing the others. But when you want to surpass others, be better than others, you have to know the difficulties that you yourself have. My nephew, besides, had the bad luck of having to, you might call it that, of In a way, good luck, but in another way, bad luck of having to compete with two of the best tennis players in history, Federer and Djokovic, in their prime, of course. In the end, he had no choice but to go to his very limit. The same way for the others, for the other two opponents too. They had to go to their own limits. Question about the family relationship, because you are his uncle and his coach. How did you manage that? The family and the coaching, affection as a family and the training that, the training needs. Yes, this was the hardest part, he says. The hardest part because, how can I say this? I was tough. I was tough. Sometimes perhaps too tough with him. But I was so basically for three reasons. The first reason is because of the challenge that we set for ourselves. That challenge was very high. So you have no choice but to assume a certain toughness. Great demand was necessary. The second, because I saw a young man who was willing and prepared to endure and accept that toughness, very willing to go through it. And third, and above all, I was tough. I mean this. I was tough with him because I felt a lot of respect for him. I would never be tough with anyone I don't care about, or have steam or appreciation. When I was director of the Rafael Nadal Academy, I always told the coaches, I always told them, be very demanding, but at the same time, remember they're young. Remember they're young, and as young people, they have to feel your own esteem and respect for them. Your respect for them. If young people sense that you respect them, that you appreciate them, they will understand you're being very demanding. It won't be a problem. They'll even like it. They'll appreciate it. I wouldn't think of being demanding with someone I don't care for. It would be the same if, for example, if I had a kid who was rude and unappreciative, who did this and that and wasn't really prepared. Oh, well, I would just say let him do whatever he wants. I tried to be, it's up to him. I tried to be demanding with the people I care about. You see young people there, he says, I was born in a world where our elders will tell you, he who loves you well will make you cry. It is a saying from our elders. I know probably today you think it's outdated, but I am sure you will hear it. I heard it from my grandmother all the time. Whenever she had to say no to me for whatever it was I would ask for, she would always say, the person who truly loves you will make you cry. That is why she always said that. But perhaps you consider it outdated. But I am sure that whoever truly loves you and cares for you doesn't always make you laugh. If I can put it this way, not to sound too outdated, if someone truly loves you and cares for you, he's not always going to make you laugh. You understand that? The next question was, Tony, when you say tough, okay, what do you mean exactly by tough? How tough? Putting demands on every, very high demands on every training session. Do you have any examples, specific examples that you remember? No, not really. It's a matter. This is very simple. It's a question of always looking for something extra, something always a little bit more, something more. When I started training my nephew, when I saw that he could indeed become a great player, what did I do? I understood that what we aspired to would be very difficult. So, if that we aspire to is hard, I have to prepare for the difficulties to come. And how do I do that? Going to the limit of very demanding training sessions. Whenever I feel I can't go on, just give a little bit more, just a little more. How do I prepare for the difficulties? By strengthening of character. And how do you strengthen character? Well, this is not a sentence of mine. Goethe said that. The great German writer said that. He said, talent is built on calmness. Character is built in the storm. I actually went to Goethe. He's right. That is what he meant. The actual quote from Torquato Tasso is, quote, talents are best nurtured in solitude. Character is best formed in the stormy willows of the world. So he's right. Yeah. To achieve a strong character, you need works, you need action. That to me is unquestionable. St. Augustine, he's a tennis coach. St. Augustine said, suffering is bad, but very good to have suffered. I look him up to it. The actual quote is not there, but it's in his in the City of God. He says that suffering, while inherently painful, can serve as a can serve a purifying purpose, allowing people to benefit spiritually, similar to how fire refines gold. That's suffering. So, that is the truth. It's reality, he continues. We now want to invent a new world. No. The thing is, in order for human beings to advance, to move forward, to move ahead, they need some discomfort. They need that things may often be complicated in order to advance, and they need to push themselves to the limits. If I trained for 2 hours and I have the first symptoms of, I don't know, I can't go on, I'm tired, and then I stop there, with difficulty am I going to improve and to excel, to exceed that level you're at right now. I uh, um, of course, everyone's tendency, and my nephews too, uh, when you are at your limit, is to say, well, that's it for today, I'm done. Okay, so I was there to just say, just a little bit more, just a little more, just a little bit more. And that little bit more every day takes you to a higher endurance capacity. And this is what almost always makes the difference. All these little bits more, that actually you gain more endurance. That is extremely important. The next question is it true that you never told Rafa that he was good? I never told him he was good. I don't like praising too much. It can easily be construed or be understood or degenerate into flattery. No, no. Uh, the question says, no, I'm talking about, you know, giving positive reinforcement. And what's that positive reinforcement? Reinforcement. Look, I used to tell Rafael, when things were really going well, I never told him he was good. When things, one year especially, things were not going very well at all, yes, I told him how good he was. That one time. My nephew didn't need me to tell him he was good because he was already winning many times. Didn't need me to tell him. When you have won Ronald Garros so many times, 8 times, and you have been among the best players for so many years, there is no need for that. I never told him. I never said, oh, how good you are. But yes, I told him when he was little, you are going to be good. Don't worry, you are going to be. Question, but don't you think, at least I think so, he says, that recognizing someone is important, um, appreciating them. You can see that both in many spheres of life, in business or personally too. When my mom and dad, says this young guy, when my mom and dad recognize publicly how proud they are of me because of the things I'm doing at the moment, that's something that really makes me feel good. It makes me happy. In this case, you see, it should have been Rafael who should have told me how good I was and have recognized me. Did he? No. Well, no, of course he recognized that, yes, there is laughter all around it. Well, you see, Rafael, was the boss. I wasn't the boss there. In the world of tennis, the boss is the player who hires you. So, as I was saying, if we are talking about recognition, it should have been he appreciating me. I know, I'm exaggerating here a bit, really, yes. But when he was young, yes. I wouldn't say you are very good, but I'd say something like, you played very well today, or this is great what you did right there, you got it, or things like that. Okay, so you admitted you would now recognize that you would be very happy with a few words, perhaps official words, from Rafa Nadal recognizing you, appreciating you, right? Oh, don't worry. He doesn't need to do that. I think he's done that already too many times. He says, "Let me show you something about this ceremony that they gave him in France. Let me see if I can share."
Tony, quiero que sepas que mi gratitud por haber sacrificado tanto por mí es infinita. Ha sido sin ningún...
Hold on, because I'm going to put the, if I can, the close. Yes, let me see here. Okay, let me start again. These are the guys there.
¿Entiendes? Pero sobre todo...
That's Nadal.
¿Apreciarías unas palabras públicas por parte de Rafa diciendo que no? No. Él les ha dicho a veces que tengo las garras a ver, Tony, quiero que sepas que mi gratitud por haber sacrificado tanto por mí es infinita. Has sido, sin ninguna duda, el mejor entrenador que jamás hubiera podido tener. Yo no necesito que...
Okay. So, okay, so there he was. There was Nadal with a few words, and he says, I really don't need him to tell me about that too much. In the end, we live in a world where sometimes we confuse representation with reality. It seems as if they give you recognition, they tell you this and they tell you that. No, you know when someone is proud of your work, when someone appreciates you. They don't need to keep telling you so much. Question. Let's talk now a bit about the best game. That best game in tennis, says one of the young guys. The 2008 Wimbledon final. Pure magic. Also because how the tennis players, they look so very different, even the different styles. Federer, as always, very elegant with the a beautiful cardigan, and Nadal, pure drive, but no sleeves, a headband, looked a mess. Even the fashions were different. The two players were so different. The styles were different. What do you remember of that game? I remember the first thing was that it was the worst hours I've ever spent, not perhaps in my life, but in a tennis court for sure. I remember we got a situation. Actually, I'll have to show you him a little bit more, or perhaps I will put the link, yeah, down in the description box of this interview so you can see what he looks like and so on. And you can put the closed captions and follow him. But I remember we got to a situation where Rafael had, we got to that situation where Rafael was beating Federer. Oh, no, one particular other occasion, just before that final at Wimbledon, in France, in Roland Garros, where Rafael at that time beat Federer quite easily. And a month later, they were again at Wimbledon. Rafael was number 2 in the world at the time, and Federer was number 1. But we were very close now. We knew this match would change the history for us. it could be that he could get to number one. The year before, Rafael had lost to Federer by a very narrow margin, actually. So now we had another opportunity. This was at Wimbledon. And the game, well, how the match unfolded, very, very high intensity. I remember Rafael was, first of all, he was ahead in the first two sets. He had won the first two sets 6-4, 6-4. The third set was closer. Rafael much closer, and Rafael had his chances to actually finish the game in the third set. But in the end, he lost the third set. And then there were a multitude of interruptions. Then there was rain in the fourth set. We had to go to the locker rooms. Everything was rather complicated there in the locker rooms. What do you say to him in the locker room? I mean, all the rain in London. Well, that was not the only interruption during that game. There were quite a few interruptions, not just one. In one of them, believe it or not, due to the tension I was having, I actually fell asleep in the locker room. You fell asleep in the locker room due to tension? Yes, I sat down, I tried to relax, I closed my eyes, fell asleep. Curious, I know it's curious, yes. Also, interruption because of rain, then a foot injury. He had to get an injection in his foot. Did he know that you were asleep? Yes, because in the next interruption, he said to me, and don't fall asleep again. You see, I closed my eyes also because I didn't want to see the injection. It was a long needle that they had to insert. A long needle had to be inserted in the foot to numb his foot. So he actually finished the game with a numb foot. Then there were other interruptions, and then the last one. Before the last interruption, Rafael had gone from clearly dominating the match to the match now being sort of equal, even sort of thing. But he was playing with a numb foot. The game was now even. He had several match points. I mean, with a good shot, he could have won the game. But the match was practically won. The match had been at one point practically won, but in the end we lost. We stopped winning, and when we got to the last interruption, which was at 2-2 in the fifth set, 2-2, well, all the time, as I was walking to the locker room, I was thinking, what can I say to him? How can I encourage him? What can I say to him right now during this last interruption in the locker room? So I went there. He was already there. And if I'm honest, I thought that because he had missed quite a few opportunities, missed quite a few chances to finish the game, and I thought that I would find him sad and discouraged and depressed and down and worried and all that, something. Thinking of all the missed chances that he had had, the missed opportunities. And I was thinking, oh my God, what explanation do I give him now? So what I remember is saying to him, look, Rafael, please, don't think now about all the missed opportunities. Try to make, if you can, try to make just a last effort, one little last effort to get to 4-4. Just 4-4. There were 2-2. Just to get to 4-4. And if we get to 4-4, then God will decide. That's what I said to him. I said, if you get to this 4-4, then it will just be a question of luck, or let's hope we have it. Get to 4-4 if you can. As I said, I really thought he would have been affected by what had happened. And then I was surprised because he said to me, Tony, don't worry. I'm not going to lose. I'm not going to lose. But immediately he rectified himself and went on saying, what I mean is, perhaps Federer will beat me. Perhaps he will beat me. But I won't lose. And if Federer beats me, next year I will again be here in the final. I have to tell you, he continues, I have to tell you that a year earlier, after he had lost at Wimbledon with Federer, he had lost to him, he told me afterwards, Tony, I'm not sure I'll ever make it to Wimbledon again, to the final again. I don't think I will. And that day, he said, don't worry, I will be here next year again. So you see, how was he able to respond in this way in such an adverse situation as we had in front of us? And I tell you, I think his upbringing, I really think so. How he was raised, how he understood sport, and partly also because of the high standards he set for himself and maintained all his life. Rafael is probably the only player in history who ended his career without having ever broken a racket. Because due to giving in discouragement. So from when he was little, he got used to this, that when things aren't going well, you grin and bear it, and you put up with it just a little bit longer. That is what he learned from when he was little. The next question, what was his most difficult moment in Rafa's career? What was that? Oh, there were painful defeats, like the one against Robert Soderling in Paris, the first time he lost in Roland Garros. Also, especially the final in Australia against Djokovic in 2012. But the toughest moments were those to do with his injury. In 2005, Rafael was diagnosed with a problem in a bone in his foot, and Let me see if I can show you again. Bear with me just a second, just a second. 45. Okay, let me see.
Problema a Rafael en un hueso del pie y cuando, bueno, al final le encontramos un especialista y este especialista en Madrid nos dijo que prácticamente que la carrera de Rafael estaba terminada, que con lo que tenía Rafael era prácticamente imposible hacer deporte de nivel o de alto nivel, porque los otros pacientes que tenían lo mismo, una rara enfermedad en un hueso de un pie, pues hacían deporte muy light.
Okay, that is not what I wanted. A little bit before. When they show a foot. Can't find it now. Okay, well, never mind. Okay, I had a picture there of a foot, and there is a bone there, and that is, he has a disease in that bone there. So he says, from 2005, my nephew was unable to finish. Many times he was unable to finish his training sessions on several occasions. And he was almost never able to play in the very long Grand Slams tournaments, the long ones, without taking a painkiller beforehand. These were the most difficult moments. The injuries that, in the end, they all those injuries, which in the end they had to put some insoles. He had to have some insoles to relieve the foot issue, but of course the insoles messed up everything else. In the end, he had various other problems. The last bit there, he was talking about a specialist who told them in 2005 that it was impossible, that Rafael Nadal could never play at that high level again. He had many patients like that, and yes, he could play light sport perhaps, but not at that high level. He wouldn't be able to. But anyway, he did. He continued. And he says, look, these are the most terrible problems to deal with for an athlete, the worst moments. Because you are an athlete, and of course, you know that sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose, all that you can deal without. Eventually you mature, you deal with that. But not to be able to partake of the game, of the tournament, for a great athlete, that is the toughest thing of all. So how do you confront those moments? Well, normal, he says. I always told him, sometimes, not many by any means, but once in a while he would come to me to talk about his injuries. You see, I am not a very complacent coach. I thought, look, I am his uncle, and I love him dearly. But I really didn't think it was a good thing to always talk about the injuries. I thought that perhaps, uh, I shouldn't talk about them too much. I didn't know how that would help. And he wouldn't talk about it too much to me either, but one or two times he came to talk about, seriously, to sit down and talk about his injuries. And I remember saying to him, Rafael, let us not complain. Let us not complain. Life has treated us very well. All things considered, very well indeed. Much better than we had anticipated. Much better, perhaps, than we deserve. Perhaps you deserve it. I certainly don't. I'm not even a good coach. And look where I am, training you. There are many people in the world who try and try and try and strive again. Many people who unfortunately have no choice but to do something the best they can, but work at something that they don't even enjoy. And look at us. There are many people who have not had our luck, or let's say the blessings we have had. So I think it's an essential thing not to complain about life, not in our situation, Rafael. I don't think that he ends by saying, well, he doesn't end. He goes on for another hour, but I'm going to end here. But just with this last thing, I have been able to observe that the vast majority of people who tend to complain most are people who are often less willing to do things to change. The people who don't have complaining as a habit, it's okay to complain once, but to have it complaining as a habit or conduct are people who the people who don't complain and don't have this habit of always complaining are people who understand their problems and therefore try to find solutions to them. So when Rafael came to me in this situation, I would say, Rafael, don't worry. There is no such bad a thing that lasts 100 years. We have to be ready for when we come back to be ready and to have a positive mind, a positive mindset to be well and calm. And this will be resolved. I think there is always a solution to problems. Anyway, that was the interview with Tony Nadal, Rafael Nadal's uncle and coach. And he goes on and on. He will talk later about for example, Federer's elegance, always as a human being, as a player. He talked about Djokovic, how a complete player he is. He thinks he's probably the best tennis player. And anyway, lots of other things, but you've got the idea. I will put the link down below. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.